update our letterhead.
Oh,
Right?
yep.
Yep. You were gone last week?
Just the last one, yeah.
You guys started.
No, I just didn't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't really like an official thing, but it happened.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember, there was one meeting where Paul was.
Yeah, it really doesn't help.
Let's see if it goes over here.
Maybe a different mic. I mean, we could just give her this mic and then I can just share off that one.
I always have it.
It's the mic.
Okay.
Okay, it's the mic.
All right.
I'll be.
Which number is it? It's 9.
Number 9.
9 is bad.
Yeah, so there wasn't really like an official thing, but Paul, I think, I don't know if he like took over for somebody because he definitely didn't serve a full 4. I don't, so, but they, I think he had to, at a certain point, and yeah, a lot of applications, so Susan made him up, yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting because here's the March 16th meeting notes. And it's changed there, but it's back to.
That's weird.
So-
Should point it out to somebody. They must have just used the old one by accident. Yeah, exactly.
Guilty of that at one time or another.
Are we waiting for others, or is it just the 3 of us? This is it? Okay. Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee for Thursday, May 18th, 2023. Can we please have a roll call?
Sure. We have member Creek is absent.
Can we all talk into the mics? Sorry, recordings.
It should be on for you.
Okay. Here we go. We'll start over. Member Krieg is absent. Member Stratton.
Present.
Member Rubrick.
Present.
Vice Chair Soriano is absent. And Chair Purcell.
Present.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public communications is the time set aside during the committee meetings for members of the public to address the committee on any items not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any public communications this evening?
We have no public speakers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And with that, we can move on to consent item number 1, approval of the Historic Preservation Committee, February 16, 2023, and March 16, 2023 meeting minutes. Were there any notes or corrections on the minutes?
No.
Nope. And you were only here for one. So I didn't have anything either. So with that, I will make a motion to approve the minutes for February 16 and March 16 as presented. And I believe I need a second.
I don't believe I can. Can we break it into two separate ones? Because I have to abstain from the last one.
Okay.
You can vote on the minutes even if you weren't here. And I have sent you guys all the correspondence, so.
But if you're more comfortable, I can
No,
break
no,
them.
that's fine.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve February 16 and March 16 meeting minutes as presented.
I second.
Can we please have roll call?
Okay. Sorry, I had her a second, but we will have you a second now. Okay, so, Member Rubric,
Approve.
Member Stratton,
I have a question. Since I was not a committee member for the February minutes, I don't know how I can approve, even though I've read them, because I wasn't in attendance at the meeting, so I wouldn't know if things were as is or not as is. So I would abstain from the February minutes and approve the March minutes.
Okay, so I think that's part of the challenge of why the minutes, the February 22nd or 16 minutes came back to this hearing, is because there was not a quorum to vote on the minutes. And I do believe that it was said that you can still vote on the minutes, but I think, yeah, let's leave that up to Chris.
You can still vote on the minutes if you feel comfortable doing so. I believe the materials were sent to you. If you reviewed them and you feel like you have an understanding sufficient to vote, feel free to do so. If you abstain, I don't believe we have a quorum and we'll have to hold off until the next meeting. But it's up to you.
When you say the materials were sent to me, I mean, I got a copy of the minutes, but I didn't get a copy of any of the materials that went with the minutes.
So you did not watch the meeting, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. In that case, yes, you should probably abstain.
Okay.
And we'll have to wait until the next hearing.
Okay, so we're approving the March 16 minutes, or none of them?
We can separate them. So February, we will continue to the next, and then March.
Okay, so I'd like to
Well,
make a motion to
there you
approve
go.
the March 16th meeting minutes as presented.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me do roll call. Member Stratton, abstain? Oh, no,
No,
sorry. Member Stratton?
I approved.
Okay. Member Rubric?
Approve.
And Chair Purcell?
Approve.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay. Hopefully that's the most stressful thing tonight. We can move on to our formal item number 2, project number 230278, Ivy Lawn Memorial Park, located at 5400 Valentine Road. And I believe we have a staff report.
Yes. You can move ahead to the next slide, please. The subject property is located at 5400 Valentine Road within the Ivy Lawn Memorial Cemetery in M1 zoning district. Specifically, the building of interest is the administrative office building outlined in the yellow line as you see on your screen there. The office building is located in the northern tier of the cemetery. The surrounding context of the building itself is a mixture of cemetery uses, which include crypts, graveyards, memorial gardens, and mausoleums. Additional uses adjacent to the administrative office building include a chapel, maintenance facilities, and a crematorium. Next slide, please. Above are examples of contributing buildings, objects, and features near the administrative office building. Buildings, objects, landscape features built prior to 1964 in the Ivy Lawn Cemetery are considered to be contributing structures per the design guidelines. The reason for the 1964 cutoff is that was the final year an architecturally significant structure was constructed in the cemetery. That final structure was the mausoleum, columbarium, and crypt at the bottom of your screen, located in the southeast quadrant of the property. Other notable structures within the vicinity of the administrative office building include a few mausoleums constructed in the 1920s pictured above. Next slide, please. Structures, objects, and landscape features constructed following the 1964 construction of the mausoleum and crypt are considered non-contributing structures per the design guidelines. In addition to the administrative office building, which we are speaking of tonight, here are some examples of more recently constructed items within the cemetery that are not considered contributing structures. Next slide, please. The proposed project is for an exterior remodel of the building and an interior remodel of the first floor, as well as a 3,328 square foot second story addition to the existing building as shown above. The proposed addition to the building maintains the Spanish colonial exterior design elements, which include stucco cladding, arched fenestration, metallic railings, and polychromatic ceramic tiles, as well as red clay roof tiles. The proposed addition to the building will retain the use of the white stucco to match the stucco used in the original 1971 building. The replacement clay roof tiles will match the existing Spanish colonial exterior design style roofing of the existing building. New metallic windows will be used for the replacement of existing windows and for new windows. The project will incorporate light fixtures reminiscent of the existing light fixtures on the existing building. Although this building is considered a non-contributing structure per the design guidelines, new development in this historic district requires Historic Preservation Committee review even for non-contributing structures. Next slide, please. Above are the proposed north and south elevations for the administrative office building. Next slide, please. Above are the floor plans for the first and second floor of the administrative office building. The first floor would contain a vehicular drive along with offices, family rooms, restrooms, break rooms, an elevator, stairs, and mechanical room. The second story would contain also offices, a lounge, restrooms, elevator, a lounge, and a conference room. Next slide, please. The city's independent consultant, the Historic Resources Group, or HRG, undertook a 5-day posting review at the end of April into early May of this year. HRG concluded that due to the proposed structure being a non-contributing structure within Ivy Lawn, determined that no further historic review was necessary. With HRG's review and staff's review, staff believes that overall the proposed remodel and addition for the non-contributing structure within the historic guidelines results in an insignificant impact to the historic area. Based on the proposal, the project would meet new construction standards set forth in the design guidelines. Next slide, please. As such, staff recommends the Historic Preservation Committee recommends approval to the Community Development Director. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions of staff before we move on to public portion of the meeting?
Well, I have some questions. So does the HRG say that the massing is going to be, I see sort of a potential difference in it being a 2-story and the fact that it's with those mausoleums in sort of a semicircle. And then the other question that I have are the trees that are in the front of that right now block the view of the administration building as you are coming up from the cemetery proper and coming in. So it's kind of concealed in its current configuration and as a single-story building. There are no other 2-story buildings that really are visible in that whole area. So, and then it gets to the height requirement or the being consistent with and compatible in size, scale, and massing with adjacent structures.
I will note that towards the very western side of in the northwest corner of the Ivy Lawn Cemetery, the maintenance building, one of the garages is approximately 1.5 to 2 stories in height.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the slide of the non-contributing structures, but it should be noted in there. Yes, the maintenance facility constructed in 2010 is probably the tallest building within the entire.
And you can't
cemetery.
really see that building from, unless you're driving right up to it, because it is set back in, and unless you're going out that gate that's there, you don't really even see that, especially from where those mausoleums are, the maintenance building. You don't see that two-story maintenance building, or the story and a half, whatever it is.
So,
Good.
what's the question here?
The question is, does this new addition, is it going to meet the scale and the massing? Is it going to be compatible? And the other part of it is, I can see if it's somewhat hidden, but if those trees have to go away due to the construction, that exposes the administration building to make it much more visible. And as you're coming in, it's going to make that building much bigger without the trees there. And then as you're coming out and as you're approaching the exit gate there and those mausoleums, that's going to become a much more prominent.
Sure. So just to answer your question real quickly, the applicant can probably provide context as to whether or not the trees will be removed or not. So when you get the chance to ask him questions, he can answer that. In terms of the massing and height, I believe that's listed within the historic district guidelines, that non-contributing structures can go up to a certain height.
One of the things with the with the guidelines when it comes to height is it does explicitly say that it's a guideline and not a requirement as far as maximum heights are concerned. So with that in mind, it is something to keep in mind that even if, and I think that kind of plays a part with the maintenance facility as well, having a bit of a higher scaling compared to everything else in there. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but yeah.
So part of the historic design review application is for HPC to make that determination. Staff and HRG believe that it is consistent with the design guidelines that have been provided. Tyler mentioned, yes, they are design guidelines, so there is discretion within that.
And I get the difference between requirements and guidelines, but unless I misread in page 4 of the staff, where it says the guidelines recommend new construction, and it talks about burial structures, but it doesn't talk about anything other than burial structures. So it doesn't really address the fact that now we're going to do something different to a non-contributing element and how it specifically may affect or not affect, other than this massing scale design. And then it said, however, the guidelines do note that additional height is allowed for architectural elements such as towers, but that, again, unless I misread it, was called out in the East Cemetery area where the other mausoleum is, and this is the North Cemetery area, so I don't know that that walks over from the east area to the north area. I didn't see it specifically called out for the north area.
Okay, well, I think we'll get into all that when
Okay.
we deliberate. Did you have any questions of staff?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so with that, I think we can move on to the applicant? Does
That's
the applicant-
correct.
would the applicant like to
Do you
address
have
this?
anything to add or present?
I don't have anything in additional to present. I would just like to thank Tyler for the
If you want to come up and speak you can add anything you'd like here,
Okay.
and then they will ask you questions.
questions. Yeah, I'm here to
afterwards.
answer questions. I'd like to thank Tyler for, what did he say? It's the insignificant building, which
Not a
that is like a great compliment to me. Thank you. And then I'm here to answer any questions yeah. I mean, I think essentially just a little background on the project. The administration building They're just outgrowing the administration building. They need some additional space. Apparently, I'll refrain from making a bad comment that people just keep going there. And my first comment to them was it would be a lot cheaper to build another building than to build a building on top of your existing building. But they would like to keep as much as the existing lawn area and everything available for other items. As far as your comment in relation to this building to the mausoleums, I think that they're kind of very separate things. I know that they're all related on the same site, but so I don't know how this would compare to a mausoleum. If that's like where you were kind of delving into. And part of what they like, I think, about this being a two-story building is that you'll see in the design it kind of looks over the property. I know there's not a lot of other two-story buildings on the property, but that seemed to be a plus for them as well. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Can you talk a little bit about the landscaping and like the pathways and the circulation around the building currently? Is any of that being changed?
None of that is proposed to be changed at this point. It's all pretty established. There is this porte-cochere there now. We are keeping that element, although changing it a little differently. So yeah, none of the trees are proposed to be removed. Yeah.
And it's hard to tell, I'm trying to see if one of these, none of these elevations have like the chapel, which is next door, right, in relationship. Is the chapel a contributor? I don't remember.
It's non.
Okay, okay, okay.
And the roof lines are all pretty similar from the chapel and all of that, you know.
Okay, I don't think I have any other any questions of the applicant?
I don't think so not at this time.
Okay, we can always bring you back up if we have further questions later, so thank you. And I'm assuming we don't have any other public comments since someone else is here, but I should ask.
We have no public speakers.
Okay, great. So with that, we can close the public portion of the meeting and then we can discuss our thoughts. It's a real deviation. I was surprised to see the design, but I do, it's a well-designed building, the new elements. It's a big change for sure. And I reviewed, the design guidelines, and it is interesting that it makes sense that they focus so much on the burial structures, but it's like nobody thought they would ever build another kind of structure in there. So that's kind of unfortunate because it doesn't leave us a lot of guidance. So I think we should, discuss some of the points that you brought up earlier, the massing specifically, and how we feel about that. I wish I had been to the site because it's hard to interpret how it might affect views and things like that from the plans, but it is pretty isolated over in this particular area. So, and then we have,
I mean, it is isolated up there, but amazingly close are the mausoleums that are, it's where you go in from the entryway and there's the fountain, and then the mausoleums go like this, and the admin building and the parking are here.
it's pretty central.
And then the chapel is here, and then the row of whatever, and burials in here, and then again, the maintenance building and crematorium are tucked in that back corner.
Go ahead.
So I guess we gotta think, is the concern is the administration building trying to be hidden at the moment from any of the surrounding areas? Is that the ultimate goal, and that's why going higher would be a bad thing? Or is it preventing a view of something where it doesn't kind of seem like it would be preventing a view even if it did go higher from, I mean, maybe from the freeway, but I don't know if the goal was ever to be able to see the mausoleums from the freeway,
No,
unlike the original intent. So, I mean, what, you know, if it did grow in height, what would be, you know, being that it's written vaguely, and it's not clear whether they're talking about buildings or, like, you know,
Burial
mausoleum,
structures,
burial
yeah.
structures, you know, yeah, I guess,
I don't know
just trying
that
to think
it's,
through.
yeah, I don't know that it's trying to be hidden or anything like that. I think it's a plus that the trees are going to remain.
I also think so, let me look at the current footprint.
It kind of looks like the footprint's not changing. Is that
It's not.
pretty much, yeah.
I like that, and I feel like spreading it out on this site would present like other issues. So if the space is, you know, really, I mean, I understand why the expansion's necessary. And then what was the other point you brought up? It's mainly the massing.
It's mainly, yeah, mainly.
I did the same thing with the roof too, because I was looking at like other roofs on other of the mausoleum structures, and there's a variety, so it's kind of, I don't know, it works, I think.
And I would say that, I mean, you're not going to mistake it.
Yeah,
The design is completely different from
completely different, yeah.
everything out there.
Do we know if it's the same governing body that applied for the historic preservation originally in 2011 in charge at the moment?
Actually,
Is there?
yeah, how should I address?
I don't know for sure, but I think so. Like, and I think they're the same, because the people that want to do this building, it's my understanding they've been on the board for a long time. I don't know how long the current.
Reopen the public hearing.
Yeah, sorry, I think I need to reopen public comment. I can just do that? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Hi, I'm Dylan. Nice to meet you guys. I'm pretty dang sure it's the same people. Gene Clark is kind of like the CEO of the pushing the project, but all the board members, I think, have been there for a really long time.
And he actually presented, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you remember, Jamie, but they built a mausoleum structure like a few years ago, and he presented. I never really wanted to know so much about mausoleums, but he gave like a very detailed presentation on mausoleums, which was pretty interesting. So they've definitely been through the process before.
I'm sorry, are we closing public
Yes,
comment
we
again?
are
Okay.
Are we close? Do you have any other questions of the applicant while we're?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment again. Thank you.
Then can I ask the two of you, since the guidelines are not clear on non-contributors and they only talk about the burial structures, what is your sense or feeling, because it does say for the North Cemetery, the burial structures shall be limited to 1 story in height or to a height of no more than 24 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So just,
I did feel like that it would make sense to implement that for all structures, although I understand that a mausoleum structure, the function of it is, you know, like, it's just not, it's kind of comparing 2 different uses, but that's what we have here, so, because this is topping out at what, 34, and that's the tower, so it's a little bit lower than that, but I'm blind. Yeah, the dome is
Yeah.
at 34, the ridge is at 30.
so this,
Where it says a little bit lower, I mean, on the original application or approval, it says like additional height can be allowed for things like towers or other accent features
that's in
that are
the
not
east.
used as burial structures.
That's in the east cemetery, not the north.
Yeah, it breaks it up
So-
in each section.
Yeah, on page 27 of the guidelines, under East Cemetery, additional height may be allowed for architectural elements such as towers or other accent features that are not used as burial structures, as their density would be limited.
Can you go back to the slide that has, like the relationship of this building to the other structures? Do we have, yeah, that. So are the closest mausoleums like on the top of the circle there? Yep. Yeah.
Was there a picture of the chapel on the?
I think it's on that. Pretty low lying.
And you can see in the chapel picture, there's the,
Oh, on the right is the current administration building?
I think that's the
Yeah,
corner
okay.
to that, yeah. And I don't know if you can transpose it enough, but the height of the maintenance building, if you could, just in your mind, slide that over, say next to the height of the chapel, since that's about the height of the admin building, you're gonna see that it's.
Definitely significant, yeah. Well,
In the East Cemetery area, what's in that general vicinity right now?
Oh, I think, is that where that, is it the A.C. Martin Mausoleum or whatever?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering why, I'm just curious why they would call out that additional height is allowed in that area as
because
opposed to other ones.
that building is pretty, it's kind of a very cube-like structure, and it does have some height to it.
Okay.
But it's not, it's a mausoleum type structure, so it's not, like, I'm curious what its height is. And we actually reviewed a project that involved that structure. You don't know, Jamie, do you, the height of that? Okay. And can you go to those photos? Do we have a photo of that building? So it's that one on the bottom. Yeah, go back to that first slide. Yeah, it's that one on the bottom. So I don't know how tall that is.
Okay.
It definitely has height to it, but it's not necessarily like
Mhm.
2 stories, because
Yeah.
it's just open on the inside. Well, I feel like we need to decide if the 2-story, like if anyone feels like the 2-story would be, or the over 25 feet, which is recommended for structures, would be kind of a deal breaker. I think that we should get that out there, because we're not gonna be able to approve the project, basically, if that's the case. It's kind of tough, honestly.
Can I ask a question?
We can go ahead and open public comment again. Yes, sure. Yes?
We're open? We're
Yeah.
good? Is it, and maybe I should have read those more clearly, is that for mausoleums that we're talking about,
So
or it's
that's
all
how
structures?
They have these guidelines, and what's implied is that they're talking about mausoleum
Yeah.
structures, but they don't provide any other guidance. So it's like, well, should we apply that to the building, or? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Because I've been working on my own mausoleum for some time, and it's a very specific structure.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that the mausoleums are historical, that they want to protect those and not have some other dude or babe with a huge ego just blow out the size of the mausoleum. That's my only thought on that. Like, this is a very different building functioning differently for that area. So to compare those, obviously we don't want a huge building here either, but does that apply to
Yeah.
all structures?
Yeah.
Are we closing the public?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir, we are gonna close public comment. I don't know, I kind of feel like its location separately, and also this is an area where if they're going to expand, I want them to expand in this area versus other portions of the property, and I don't necessarily want them to go larger, like take up a wider, bigger footprint, so those are kind of my thoughts. And did we have any other concerns besides the massing? I mean, I think, like you said, architecturally, it definitely, it's different, but which is good, you know. It won't give the impression of.
I'm just trying to reread this, just as to make sure. You know, it talks about the area that it doesn't contain any above ground historic contributing elements. And then there's one sentence that says the existing buildings in the area are the non-contributing administrative building, period. Then the next sentence is, although not restricted by the historic concern, you know, planned construction of these burial structures shall be limited to 1 story in height or to a height of no more than 24 feet. Not part of the same sentence where they talk about an administrative building just in the middle, saying it's not historically, you know,
It's not contributing.
contributing, and then they talk about burial structures being less than 24 feet.
Right.
Where I think you could read it as 2 separate things, like the building itself, and then the only thing above there where it's like the height of any new buildings shall be consistent and compatible with size, scale, and massing with the existing or adjacent structures. That is a little harder because there's not really anything adjacent besides the chapel, but as long as it's not overwhelming the chapel.
Yeah,
You know.
and which the chapel isn't contributing either,
It's
but
You
yeah.
know how tall the chapel is by chance?
I don't. I could guess for you, but
I mean, but it looks like almost probably the same as the administrative building, roughly.
yeah, my
The
guess
current
is,
one.
Got
My
open
guess is
public
Oh,
comment.
sorry.
Dylan wants to talk.
This is hard.
Why, can we leave it open while we kind of deliberate or not really?
You're supposed to separate those two things.
Okay,
Okay.
it's open right now.
Okay. So, to your knowledge, do you roughly know the
I
height?
think the chapel is a bit taller than, like, the chapel might have like a 10 or 12 foot plate height. The administrative building has I believe like an 8 or 9 foot plate height.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, closing public comment. Maybe for the last time, I'm not sure. Probably not.
The design is really different from what's there right now.
It is, and really different from the chapel too. But I don't know, since those structures are all non-contributing, it's like, I don't think. I don't know how much it matters, you know? It definitely doesn't, it's different.
I guess the vast majority that goes well above the 24 feet is, you know, the dome and I guess the pitched roof section. Is the rest a flat or It appears to be a flat roof, but
Yeah, it looks like portions are flat.
where that's a lot closer to the 24 feet.
And it's also nice that the majority of it is a flat structure, because many of the mausoleums are flat or such tiny pitch that it's more conforming to that, the mausoleums.
I guess while we ponder a little bit the massing, were there any other concerns? I mean, again, I looked at the roof and I thought, okay, like, how does this interact with the chapel? And there's so many different roof structures out there. This has a lot going on with the roofs, I will say. There's a lot of different roof structures or roof pitches in this building. But any other comments specifically on materials or design that we feel need to be considered? I think the mass and scale is the main thing, and staying in that original footprint is nice.
I guess, playing devil's advocate, the best thing that it has going for it is that it's up front and it's not, smack in the middle of something. And when you come to a cemetery, it's not the admin building that you're essentially, going to a cemetery for. But given the fact, the devil's advocate part, now that it's going to 2-story, it's going to be in your face when you drive in now.
More just
Much
stand
more
out.
than it is now.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think especially next to the chapel too, because that thing is like low lying. Yeah, it's just a low lying design,
But I get the need for expansion, and I don't know, if the design were more like the original admin, the original admin building is kind of nondescript. This is not nondescript anymore. I don't
Yeah.
feel that it is. It's a great design, but
It is.
it's not
It doesn't just like blend in.
exactly.
Yeah, which basically that's what the other structures do. Yeah. Well, unless we have specific guidance, like we want to see a completely different design, I'm just trying to figure out where we go from here.
Can you do a test vote before you do the real vote?
Well, I feel like I can say,
Gotcha.
is anyone, what are the deal breakers? If we have deal breakers? The height,
Yeah, mainly the height.
just the height.
And I guess it's also significantly higher, to the point where it's like 10 feet higher than the limit. It's not 1 foot higher or something, or I guess any amount over that would be over the limit, so.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 feet higher?
I kind of think it does, because I feel like can we see the chapel, the slide with the chapel on it? It's just such a low lying design, and like you said, very just nondescript.
When appropriate, I'd like to make another comment if allowed.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open public comment.
And maybe to the downfall of what we understood this meeting to be, we could definitely have the board members and Janine come to you guys, because I think the same people that push to have the overlay done in this area. They're the same people driving this project. Just if that gives you, because it seems like there's like some, like, is this supposed to be this, or what was the intent, who wrote this? And I don't know if that gives you any grace, like, it's not the neighbors trying to build a mansion with the other entity. It's all the same entity. It's their building on their property. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I just feel to compare the mausoleum to this seems like apples to oranges to me a little bit. I mean, it's all on the same property, but.
It isn't so much, I don't think, comparing the admin building to the mausoleum. It's the effect of what the new admin building has on the feeling and association of the mausoleums and where they are. And if the two-story, since that's the biggest, and if the two-storiness of the new proposed admin building, if it takes away the feeling and association and the sighting of the mausoleum. I guess another question, I appreciate the fact that it's all in the one footprint. But then the other question is, if the building, I know there's parking on the one side towards Valentine Road, could you get the same number of square feet by actually expanding the footprint and going that way? And then and keeping it at a single story, which, because then you're just kind of driving by building versus parking structure, and it's really not changing, or it's not, it potentially has less of an effect on the setting, feeling, and association of the mausoleums that are up front.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the main question we're on is a two-story building there appropriate? And that's maybe what we need to find out. I can always lower the building a little bit or raise it or what, it's not like, oh, it can't change. That's not difficult. But I guess to your guys' point, if it was 2 feet lower, we're still having the same conversation, right? It's not about 2 feet in height. And maybe you guys are just struggling. Is the second story in general not appropriate?
The hard thing is we are going off of what's written, so there's a little room for interpretation, but not much. Like, it's laid out. So, I mean, if it was 2 stories and all under 24 feet, there wouldn't be a discussion as much, because it meets the criteria laid out. So, like if it was, without the tower and stuff, and it was mainly just the flat roof portion.
Can you pull up the elevation again?
Where I think the plate was at 23, so it was a lot closer to that.
Do you want this one or? Yeah, I can bring up the plans too, if that helps.
Sure, because I can't read the numbers on there. I'm just wondering too, like, if that's your concern, there's a lot of things I can do if there's a threshold, right? And that's kind of the whole part of the point, like, of the early meeting of this is like, it's not hard for me to adjust. Certain things I can adjust. If you're like, get the second story off there, I'm like,
what percentage design are you guys at?
I like to do all my designs at 100%. This is where we're at.
Okay, but I mean, but there's room for modifications at this point.
I mean, you could go from a side of fries to sweet potato fries, but there is some, they like it the way that it is, but there's flexibility. There's some nice plate heights. I mean, essentially, that is a flat parapet roof on the left. There is the elevator tower, which is the dome, which I would say that is more of like an architectural element as opposed to like the actual building height. And then there is also this conference, that's a conference room on the right with the pitched roof. But so any of those could be adjusted if there was a specific issue that you guys are seeing, like this is crossing that specific threshold, like I can see if I can meet those things. part of, I think, though, I was going to say fun, that's the wrong word for a cemetery. The playfulness of the Spanish colonial architecture is some of those elements that they're different and they're you know, they're not symmetrical, but they're playing off each other. They're a little dynamic. So sometimes when you have that like hard height limit, then everything gets pushed to that and you lose that kind of charm. But and obviously the ground floor is locked in terms of height, but the second floor is what we're adding, and I could play with that. But, you know, to get the whole thing under, oh, that's a good picture. To get the whole thing under 24 feet, I could probably achieve this, but that line right there, that's 23 feet. So,
I guess I don't personally feel like I need it to be under 24 feet, but maybe just like a more, like a just lower, more, like a more low-lying design, basically. So those portions that are taller, maybe we could reduce those areas. I don't feel like, I'm not stuck on it having to be 24, but I think some of the taller portions would be nice to see some of those reduced, just so we have like a more low-lying overall design.
yep. Can you scroll back over to that side? So I can see the heights. So these are still kind of concept heights, but so the first floor is 9 feet. And so that's the first floor plate height, and then I have like the second floor is 11 feet. So then that's 23 foot is the plate height of, I believe, like that over there, and this is even higher. So I mean that's, I can do the math on that. That's like a 12-foot plate height. So I mean I can easily bring that down, especially because it's going to be vaulted on the inside, and so the ridge will be even higher. But I mean, now, can I bring that down to like the ridge being 24 feet? Probably not, but I could, you know, like, it is a communal gathering space. It's a conference room, so they have like an 8-foot plate height.
Wouldn't be
Feel
great.
Right, but
Yeah.
if we had like instead of a 12-foot, if we had like a 10-foot plate height and then it vaults, it's still gonna feel nice. It's not gonna be as high as this ceiling, but it's a smaller room than this.
And am I correct that the chapel is off that
Correct.
end over there? Okay, so at least, I mean, the
That's
lower
good.
part is leading, it's sort of stepping down
Over
into,
towards the chapel, yeah. Yeah.
So I've never, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. And am I able, I can communicate with staff during this period, yeah? Okay, so
Yes.
I've never had, like, dealt with a situation like this where I'm not sure if we're going here or not, but if we do, we might have, like, we would want to see the design again. What kind of motion would we make for something like that with certain recommendations or?
Exactly, and you had alluded to that earlier. That is an option to provide feedback and recommendations, and in the motion say for it to come back. So the 3 different motions, you can include recommendation as is, or include comments and move it on, include comments, have it come back, or don't provide any comments and just say that the director recommend not approving the project.
Okay. Thank you. Do we want to, well, okay, so I think if we were gonna make a motion like that with recommendations, the height, we know that we would like to probably see some designs with lower roof lines integrated. So do we have any other things, if we were gonna make a motion like that, that we would like to discuss? Because I would like to make sure if we're gonna provide feedback, we do it all at once.
Sure.
So I guess my only thoughts about the design in general, I really like the design in general, but I do think it's very different than what's out there right now, and what's out there right now is kind of like very nondescript, like we talked about. I understand you're designing something with so much new space, and you know, you want it to have style, like style, and not just be like a nondescript 1960s vibe. There's a lot going on, a lot of different planes and stuff like that, which is pretty distinctly different from the other structures out there.
I mean, for me, I don't dislike the design at all. I'm not, especially since the other one is not historically significant.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it needs to tie to that one, because I do think this is more aesthetically pleasing in general than the other one. But I would also, I feel like I wish I had some more pictures of the chapel or something, just to make sure that it's gonna tie in, because that'll be the only other thing that it's close to. Because I'm not too worried about it being like detracting from like the mausoleums, which are removed, but the chapel is like right there. So just as long as it doesn't overshadow that and make it look awkward or weird, that would be my only concern.
And I guess, you know, kind of to tag on to both of you, this is 2023, and one of the things that it sort of asserts in the guidelines is that new construction should be representative of where we are. And you look at, like, after the fire burns and things, they're more boxy, flat roof, that kind of thing, which, you know, even though this has this sort of Spanish colonial kind of facade, or it fits in that kind of a...
It's definitely contemporary.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not trying to be something else, I don't feel.
It's not trying to replicate the downtown Mission.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Okay, so I don't know that we have any other specific recommendations aside from the height. So is that correct? Any?
Yeah, I would, to maybe just summarize here to see if we're all on the same page. That
Can we talk into the mic too, just so that we can all reference this after the fact? We want to be able to hear you guys.
Sure, sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. To kind of just summarize thought processes here, that the height, if it can come down some, but we don't have a set, it has to be below 24. It's just to kind of bring it down so that it maybe isn't so overpowering in the sense of the chapel next door. And if there's a way that we can have a drawing or picture or something that shows the chapel next to the rendering here, so that we can get a better idea of sort of the scale and the massing. And I appreciate the fact that the trees are still going to be there, because I think that sort of is a segue, a landscape segue into when you actually get into the cemetery. I think it sort of softens everything to leading to those historic mausoleums. So I would make a recommendation or a motion that we see a set of drawings that have been modified to lower the height, particularly of the conference room area and the porte cochere, and then if that comes down, to make the dome so that it's reflective, you know, not sticking up there. It stays the same height, and so that it reflects and blends together all three sort of different roof lines there. And then we get some sort of pictures, drawings that relate the new admin building to the chapel area.
I will second that, if that is a motion. We have a roll call, please.
Do we need, so you're continuing the project, is that,
Yes.
and do you want to do it to a date certain or a date uncertain?
I would,
Find out how long is needed
So we have meetings once a month.
for, just to make sure the architects have time to,
Yeah, I
because
guess,
a
I
month,
mean,
a month might be too short, that's all.
pardon me?
A month might be too short, is what I'm
Okay.
saying. That's
Would-
why.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rush the person, but I don't want to hold up the person either, so.
Jamie?
What was the question?
Date certain or date uncertain?
If you want to open up public comment again,
Okay.
just
We
to ask.
can, yeah,
the
we can
applicant.
ask the applicant what works for him.
What do you think?
Just to clarify, this is the date that I go into the
Would come back
mausoleum
Here.
for good? Forever?
I hope not.
I'm ready. I told you I'm 100%. Let's do this. Well, pick a date. Sooner the better.
Just, so if we give you a month, you're good?
Next meeting?
Yeah. I mean, what are you guys doing later tonight? Yeah. What? Yeah, a month's good.
Next meeting is June 15th,
Would you need the drawings?
in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's no
the thing. You sure? Okay.
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 Close the public comment again?
We will close the
Close.
public comment.
Okay, so let me clarify the motion that we're continuing the project to a date certain of June 15th. And you would like to see a set of drawings to lower the height, to make the dome reflective and blend in together with the other heights. And you would like to have more pictures of how the new structure will look against the chapel. Okay. Member Stratton?
Yes.
Member Rubik?
Yes.
And Chair Prezell?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, I don't. You're not counting.
Okay, let's see. I lost my agenda, so let me get back there.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, I believe that's our only formal item. Thank you both. That was really, that was like challenging, but I'm glad we worked through it. And we can move on to staff communication.
Just that we will have our next HPC meeting June 15th.
Okay, great.
And of course, if you're not going to make it, please let me know sooner than later. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
June 15th. I'm not going to make it.
There we go.
Noted.
And with that, I believe we can adjourn this evening's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, you too. Thank you for all that. So is that fine to just,
Open and close it up. Yeah, I've seen it happens all the time.
okay.
Yeah, especially, these are slightly less formal